ancestors ate the manna in the desert, but they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever, and the bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world. The Gospel of the Lord. Hey friends, this week I got a humdinger of a homily, as I said before, but this one is on our Facebook page, can be accessed by going to our website and just clicking on that Facebook page. You do not need to be a member. You can just click on it and you scroll down. That first video will be the homily, so I kind of suggest that you might want to take some time in a nice cool room to actually watch the homily. This obviously is the Bread of Life discourse, so it's one centered on the Eucharist. Folks, but I am going to take some time to discuss something a little bit different. How many of you folks read the Boston Globe, the story about the seminary in the Boston Globe yesterday? Raise your hands. And how many people watched the news and saw it on TV? Raise your hands. Okay, so some of you have. So those who haven't, some two former seminarians from St. John's Seminary had placed remarks in social media with respect to their formation inside there, and made some accusations inside there. And inside those accusations, they leveled some charges that within the seminary itself, there was a lot of drinking parties and some immoral behavior. And the immoral behavior, they were talking about that a few seminarians with each other were entering into conjugal acts. Is that discreet enough, folks? Okay, very good. So we get a sense as to what those were. This happened in light of the news about Cardinal McCarrick and his consorting with seminarians when he was a cardinal inside there. So these who were former seminarians at St. John's had issued these. Cardinal Sean, to his great credit, right off the bat, took action. And as we read the paper, I want to be very clear for you to understand. The rector, his father, is Monsignor James Maroney. He's been there 6 years, and I must tell you, he is, in my estimation, the best rector they have probably ever had at St. John's Seminary. With all the work he's done in formation, with all the work he's done in expanding the seminary and bringing more seminaries inside there from other parts of this country, he has done an exceptional job. It may seem that he was removed from that position. He was not removed from the position. What happened was, the cardinal decided that he wanted to be very, very cautious, and he thought this would be a good opportunity for him to send in a group of people to investigate any of these claims, to take a look at the life of the seminarians, the life of the faculty, to see within that scope, how it is that the faculty and the students are interacting, if they're interacting on a more informal tone or on a more professional tone, is some of the things that they're looking at inside there. And so to do that, they wouldn't really be able to have that freedom to do that if the rector was still there. So what he did is he's asked the rector, and the rector has agreed to take a sabbatical. That is a period of, 3 or 4 months, I believe, to go, and in sabbatical you study, so he'll probably head over to Rome. This guy helped write the translation for the Roman Missal. This guy is a genius. He's a brainiac, and he's a very holy man from everything all my interactions with him. So he's on sabbatical. So the expectation is he'd come back. But what happens in the meantime is they're sending in a group of four professionals, to take a look at the life inside there and to establish a set of policies and procedures with how seminarians are to perform their role and how the faculty are to perform their role as well. And if there needs to be any distinctions placed inside it, that they do that. So now what I want to move on is so we can better understand this. These are just accusations from two former seminarians who left there, who said that it wasn't the holy place that they thought that it should be. And then they made those two references. Now, the cardinal, again, in great caution, reacted. Another time and age, that probably wouldn't be a reaction. But in this time and age, sensitive to each one of us, he knows that there needs to be a good accountant, and we need to have good and holy priests. Now I would like to explain to you what a seminary is, so that can put anything with respect to conjugal acts there in better perspective. When you go into a seminary, a lot of us think, and I know I thought when I first went inside there, or as I was going inside there, that a seminary is a place that once you go inside there, they train you and you become a priest. But that really isn't what a seminary is completely about. A seminary is a place of discernment. So the man himself can discern whether he believes God is calling him to living a life as a priest, and for the church, through its faculty members, to look at that man, to see how he performs, to see how he lives out his life, and to see whether they think the church is calling him to priesthood as well. In any all-male institution that you go to, you are going to find out that a small number of men are attracted to each other, correct? That's not surprising, is it? All right. And inside there, they come to discover this, and when they discover this, they have to make up a decision, and that is whether they can be celibate and live out a life as a priest, or whether they can't. And if they are unable to do that, then they leave the seminary. Listen, this has been this way since the 1930s. It is to this present day. It was for the time that I was inside there. We had some guys who had made particular friendships with each other, real close friendships. And do you know what? The ones that I know of, they all left because they realized that they couldn't undertake that priestly role inside their life. And good for them. They came to understand something more clearly about themselves. They were honest about it, and then they left. There are also seminarians that have gone inside there and have determined, that that secret girlfriend probably isn't the greatest help to become a priest, and then they've realized that they're not called for priestly life, and they've gone off and sometimes married those girls or some girl thereafter. So seminary is a house of formation for us to discern whether God's calling us to priesthood or not. So we shouldn't be scandalized that that stuff might happen inside there. We should be scandalized if that stuff happens and nobody says, listen, you got to change your ways, or you got to leave right now. That's when we should be scandalized. That's not what's happening. What's happening is when we find that, we speak to them and we express to them that important charism of celibacy, and then they find their way out of the seminary inside there. Remember, it's a place for us to train them, to educate them, and to form them. And it's time for them to be honest and to accept that themselves. So, my friends, I think, we need to be more realistic to understand maybe one thing from this, the fallenness of man. Every man has those challenges in his life, doesn't he? Yeah. Sometimes it's a challenge to be faithful to one's spouse or to one's girlfriend. So it's not much different when you're inside a seminary, right? We do fall. We do make stupid mistakes. Who does the devil want to go after the most? He wants to go after good, holy people, and especially holy men who want to become priests. And that's why he throws all those temptations in their way. And hopefully in that formation, they can build up enough grace that they know they're strong enough that when they become priests, they'll be able to continue to combat those temptations and live in the virtue that is God. The other thing they talked about inside there was drinking, okay? One will get the idea from one of them that seminary was just one big drink fest. Certainly not when I was there. Maybe I went at the wrong time. It would have been a lot more fun than what I had. So let me explain to you what the reality is and what's really being said so we can uncode this. You go through seminary, most guys go through 6 years, 2 years of pre-theology and 4 years of theology. That's 6 classes. And throughout the year, each of those classes has a responsibility to hold a party for the rest of the seminary, for the priests as well as for the seminarians themselves. Now, the theme parties might be St. Patrick's Day, it might be Halloween, so there's theme parties that they have inside there. And they have really great meals. I mean, really good steak they serve us. And they also have wine at dinner. Now, afterwards, you can go upstairs to the common room that serves beer. You can have beer inside there. But for the ones that I went through, and I think I went through 5 of those, never saw anybody get drunk. And I do know for the few guys who were inside seminary with me who had developed a drinking problem, the diocese identified it inside seminary, got them help. They went on to be ordained, and they're very fine priests inside there. What a great ministry that is. So this idea that you have a lot of drinking that's going on in the seminary, folks, I've been through that. You got a tough curriculum, a tough caseload of courses that you have to take, and then other work you have to do outside there in your pastoral assignments. It's not easy. You wouldn't have the time to do what's being alleged in terms of that. You just don't have that time. Then the last thing I want to say is this. So the men who go inside there, they're not going in out of high school. We don't have that anymore. If anybody goes into the seminary, it's a graduate school, it's a theology school. You have to graduate college. So the men who are in there, probably the youngest one is probably 22. Most of them around probably 25 to maybe around 32 who are inside there. Now, if we went off there and we stopped and we said, you can no longer have beer while you're studying inside seminary, how many vocations do you think we would have? And do you think those guys coming out would be just regular guys? People you could relate to? I don't think so. So I don't think that's the answer. I think it is an answer to look and put protocols inside there in terms of maybe the hours of operation of a pub, or whether it's locked inside there or something, or the conduct of when someone could drink, maybe limiting to weekends. Those are the things they could put inside there. But I'll tell you, I read those quotes inside there, and I'll tell you, they were quite exaggerated quotes, and quotes that really, unless you went through it, you couldn't completely understand what's going on. Remember, they're not priests. They're studying to be priests. Now, if they were priests, sure, there'd be a great scandal inside there, but they're not. They're trying to get through life and figure out what God's called them to priesthood. So in all of this, it maybe does remind us of something. It reminds me of a couple things. One, how very fortunate we are to have Cardinal Sean, and the strength it must have taken to take a rector who's worked so hard and is perhaps the best rector we ever had, and had to say to the guy, I need you to go in sabbatical for 4 months while we look at your leadership and we look to put new policies and procedures inside there. That couldn't have been a fun conversation for either one of the parties. Thank God he's very cautious, and he's really promoting just the best of our interests. So I want us to remember that. I also want to remember us the importance of prayer. At each one of the exits, I always have these cards with the seminarians' names on them. It is so important for you guys to pray for these seminarians. I feel so bad for all the good seminarians of St. John's Seminary, because now, at least in reading that newspaper, reading the newspaper article and some of the stuff online, one would get the idea it is full of a bunch of evil men. And it is just the opposite. It is a house of discernment full of a bunch of men who love God with everything they have and are struggling to do the best thing and to figure out whether God's called them to priesthood. The best thing we can do is help them with our prayers. Help every one of them. So if they're called to priesthood, they go on to priesthood. If there's a pull to, that same, to a buddy inside there, that they come to an understanding of that, and so they move on from the seminary and they continue inside their life, and we pray for their happiness as well. Look, where would we be without them? I'll tell you right now, with everything that's going on in the church, I think they are absolutely nuts. They are crazy. Who would want to be a priest in this day and age with all the difficulties that are going with it, with the incredible amount of workload that priests are overburdened with. Why would they ever want to do that? Won't you agree they're nuts? Sure, but they're nuts for Jesus. That's pretty special, isn't it? Their love for God and for us is so. Listen, I went inside there in a different age. They're going inside there with all the baggage of this last 20 years, and they're still going in there. They still want to be holy men of God. These are my heroes. I hope they're your heroes as well. And that's why I say it's incumbent upon us to pray for these holy men, because we need them as our priests. And for those who leave, we need them to be holy as well, and to stick to their church, and to love their church, and to support their church. My friends, continue to pray for them. They need it. But feel secure in your seminary and the men that are coming out of seminary. They're good and holy men. It is a good process of discernment, and it is a great investment of our prayers and of our financial support for them. Thank you. Trusting in Well, thank you for that affirmation for them. Let us stand and offer our prayers before our Heavenly Father.